Lynn Wilkinson. I'm the public service here, and I'm going to talk to you today about equality and diversity within the public services. Primarily being, there is a lot of press reports at the moment saying that certain companies, certain professions are not open to females, to gay people, to transgender people. But I can assure you one thing that is equal pay, equal opportunities, is the UK public services. So let me just quickly introduce myself. My background is in the military, and I'm an emergency plan and disaster manager, but I've also been teaching public services at a degree level for many years. My background, as I said, is in the military, but I've also got a background in aviation and security. So what are public services? Primarily public services, everybody tends to think of the big four public services, we call it: the police, the fire service, the ambulance, and the military. But the public services is huge. It encompasses everything from child support, the criminal justice system, ambulance service, teaching, right the way through any organisation or any part of an organisation that actually deals with governmental or government issues. This really means then that why do we need to define equality? Well, it's really quite straightforward. The public service for many years has relied on the quality of its people. We don't really mind whether you're gay, you're Asian, you're black, you're transgender. That doesn't affect what we do within the public services system. It goes on your performance. It goes on the needs of the organisation at the time. And it goes on the trends and the capabilities of that service. So if that service needs a female pilot, or the National Health Service needs a male midwife, then all those opportunities, all those jobs are now fully open to everybody who wants to join the public services. There are certain caveats that we'll mention later about people who can join the service. But what's equality then? Straightforward definition. In the Equality Act 2010, and that's the primary legislation, the Equality Act states that we cannot now prejudice people on the basis of 9 protected characteristics. These would include gender, marital state, sexuality, colour, race, religion, and the general ones that are used within the whole system of the UK equality legislation. But as public services, we have to have certain elements that are built into that Equality Act to deal with the operations that we need to do. One we always cite, and generally cite: if you're going to be a fast jet pilot, you can't have impaired sight. Or if you want to work in certain operations such as submarines or divers, then it's not really based towards females. That's changing, and we're now getting a lot of people coming on board. And since 2010, 2018, we now have females in very important positions and positions within all the military. And the military, in fact, are the first people under the equality system to actually open up all jobs, all employment for females. The Royal Air Force has fully opened all its jobs. The Royal Navy is now fully opened its jobs, which means if a female wants to be a submariner, there's no restriction. The Army is slightly slower because of the combat roles that females may be employed in. But all of the public services, including fire service, police, fire and rescue, environment agency, NHS, has now opened up all employments to all sectors of society. So let's have a quick look then. Let's have a historical context. Now, we forget how far equality goes back. And for the public services, we look right the way back to the First World War. So coming up to 100 years, where females were first integrated into the public services. Most of the men were fighting at the front, and jobs then became open to women. And as we said, they were the first jobs to have equal pay and conditions for females within the context of public services. So one of the ideas here is that female police officers, female police officers now are on the same rate of pay and same rate as males for pay and conditions and promotion since 1918. We had to rely on the relationship with females in the public services to enable men to be freed up for the more onerous and combat jobs. And women started to expand within that public services. And so that equality barrier was slowly being chipped away, to the extent now that we are a combined force. So right away from 1940s, where women were fully brought under the Equality Act, right up to the 2018, and particularly in the Royal Air Force now, women, we have female pilots, fast jet pilots, we have women who are operating in combat zones on aircraft and helicopters. And you can relate that directly to the police force. A woman joining the police force, or a person joining the police force now, is expected to perform, have the same performance measures as a man. There is no ceiling to what females, gay, transgender people, or people with elements of disability can achieve within a public service. Okay, and the same with the fire service. We could cite loads and loads of different elements of equality in the public services. But a telling thing was a documentary on Friday this week, and it's the 5th of April now. The first female pilots to have equal terms with men were the Women's Auxiliary Flying Service, used to deliver Spitfires and Wellingtons. And they were the first women to have equal pay terms with RAF pilots. And that's how far back and how advanced that the public service system is. So let's move on from that then. So we'll talk about the glass ceiling in a moment. But what if you're gay, transgender, transcending, or you're fluid in your gender type? The public service does not define gay, transgender people any different from what they define people coming through who are straight, who have normal heritage. The example over here is an officer in the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, Hannah, and she has actually been on TV promoting transgender and gay issues. Initially started as a guy called John, came through the military, is an engineering officer, and has now had 2 combat tours of Northern Ireland and 2 combat tours of Afghanistan. The police now accept that there is no barrier for transgender, female, gay or people to join the police at all. And they make special issue of encouraging people, whether it's race, transgender, gay or females, to join public services. And lastly, I always put the Navy up. The Navy are very, very forward-thinking in their equality and diversity factors. The Navy now have brought females into more senior roles than any other military services. And we'll see a couple of these roles in a moment, just to show you that we are moving forward with bounds after bounds to meet our equality duties. But there's always a caveat. There's always a caveat. The Equality Act 2010 said there are 9 protected characteristics. And these are quite straightforward. You can imagine what the protected characteristics are. But we also have a public sector equality duty. And that's really to do with recruiting and fitting the right person to the job. If you have serious mental illness, or you have anything that could stop the operational efficiency or the way you work within the military, the police or the fire service, then under the Equality Act, the public sector equality duty, you can be refused entry. And you can imagine the reasons for that. If you are suffering with mental illness, or you are suffering with a severe disability such as diabetes or dyslexia, not dyslexia, cut that one, or having fits, then you really cannot go into a combat situation where people can't deal with that. So the aspects of gender, sexuality and all that has gone, but the public sector equality duty does say that you can be discriminated on the bounds where it's not operationally acceptable to be in that position. And again, with time, that will change. Particularly post-Afghanistan, people coming out of the police with post-traumatic stress disorder, the covenant within the public service equality duty means that we are obliged as a public service to look after you, to have this covenant with you, so you have priority medical, health and employment still within the public services. So, a couple of personalities. And I always like to put the Queen up first, because she's our boss, in real terms. But the Crown, Elizabeth II, has always been a supporter of females in the public services, always been a champion, and herself joined the army in the Second World War and worked within the system. But if you're going into 2018, let's have a look at some of the glass ceiling issues. Now, if you're unsure what the glass ceiling is, it's an imaginary thing that people of the non-protected characteristics, or females or transgender people, can't break through to get into high power position jobs. But we have a female Prime Minister. And I don't think the top job within the public services, the head of the public services, is a female. The head of the Metropolitan Police in London is a female. Now, you can't say to me that these people have been constrained and held down by the aspects of their job. We have a female Home Secretary, so in charge of policing, prisons, security in the country is a female. Danny Cotton, Queen's Fire Service Medal, so a very highly decorated female. She is the Commissioner of London Fire Service. If you watch, this lady is going to go up and up and up and break through that barrier of that equality. That lady coordinated all the fire service and systems for the Grenfell fire. Very, very, very powerful young woman she's going to be. The head of the Supreme Court in the United Kingdom is now a female. Strange to say, Baroness Hale of Richmond, that we actually met when we went there, Baroness Hale of Richmond is one of the only top judges, female top judges, in the whole of the country. So the Supreme Court, the 8 to 12 judges of the Supreme Court, the actual principal of the Supreme Court is a female. So that is really breaking through those barriers. Now, if you put that in the same aspect of corporate, when you're working in the City of London, the amount of females who are working in private companies in the head jobs to public companies and public services, there is a large disparity. And don't forget the Equality Act. The Equality Act is a very, very powerful binding piece of legislation. Now, on a thing like a public service course that we teach here at David Game, we spend 3 months looking at equality issues for public services and the public service equality duty. That macho image of being all men fighting or all men being policemen has gone. We are now looking at bringing on females, bringing on gay, transgender people, and giving them equal opportunities to climb the system. So, what are the services? Well, let's have a look at services, pay and conditions. And this is right across the public service system. So whether you're a teacher, whether you're a pilot, whether you're a little soldier digging a hole in the ground, or a nurse in an NHS, you are guaranteed, male and female, have exactly the same pay and conditions. We do not discriminate at all on the basis of gender. We don't discriminate on the basis of disablement if you can meet the criteria for the job. So that would be the public services exemption. You are not counted for promotion if you're gay, or you are not biased or conditioned against. Your pay and conditions are equal. If you're biased, then you have the same conditions as your husband or your wife in the military. And you can have paternity and maternity leave equal. Obviously, if you're in the military, this would be due to operational conditions. That's Prince Harry, we've got to get rid of. We have equality of pay and pensions. So there is no pensions gap that you may get if you work for a company outside the public services. So if you take 10 years off to have your children as a female, that pay and pensions gap can be made up very quickly. Equal rights to equality issues right the way through. That means that you can go and ask for help and challenge anybody at any stage, if you're the lowly little soldier to a general in the army. We have equal rights from the government. We call it the covenant. We expect the government to look after our public services. That's why our pensions are very good. And this course, this David Game course here, will give you an idea of your first footfall into that. And these pensions are one of the only end salary pensions still available. So what you earn at the end, they come out very, very good. That also covers medical, housing, and other elements. There's an equality across the public services. You can move within the public services. So if one day you want to be a health visitor, then go into social services, nobody is going to stop you. Nobody's going to say, as a female, you can't do that. As a gay man, you can't go into the prison service, and these sort of things. And lastly, as we discussed before, there is equal maternity and paternity rights right across the system, depending on operational capability. Very difficult for the military to do. To conclude then, public services is open to everybody. In this course here at David Game, you get a full insight into every element of the public services, which gives you a foothold to go into what used to be a closed organisation. But the nature now, and the technical nature of public services, particularly policing, particularly the criminal justice system, and particularly the military, now requires people from varying backgrounds, varying skills, various countries. So what we would say is that public service is open to everybody. And Hillary Clinton had a good quote. She said, although we weren't able to shatter that higher glass ceiling this time, thanks to you, it's about 18 million cracks in it, which generally means that if you want the career you want in public services, get qualified and go for it. It is completely open. Thank you very much.